The residents of the Tenderloin know what they feel on these streets. Businesses, universities, they know what the difference is when Urban Alchemy has been on these streets. But it seems more like a political conversation than it does a reality. So when Dr. Forrest Stewart came to me and he asked for permission to study the results of Urban Alchemy, or what was happening with Urban Alchemy out on these streets, I said, on the condition that you look at our impact on crime in the streets that we are, because I know we are making a difference. I know we are changing the environment. That's why Urban Alchemy has grown so much. That's why we've been in demand. But I don't have any data. I can't prove it. So I feel like I'm just out here trying to scream to the world what is happening here. And no one is listening. But today we got that data. Crime rates are dropping throughout San Francisco. In here in the Tenderloin, Dr. Stewart's research shows that crime rates have dropped by 52% in the Tenderloin, on the streets where Urban Alchemy is. We have saved the lives of an average of over 200 people a year. During the pandemic, it was up to like 400 or 500. Through not only Narcan reversals, but first aid procedures. Our results show the difference between social service programs built by and for the people in our own neighborhoods, the people who are looking from the outside in and making opinions and conjecture about how it should be done. We grew organically in response to the conditions that we saw, using common sense approach to the realities that we were engaging with every day to create this unique model that is Urban Alchemy. We talk a lot about San Francisco being the heart of tech. But what a lot of people don't understand about San Francisco is it's always been a boom or bust city. This city has always been gritty and grimy. We're beautiful too, and we have a lot of things going on. But that grit, that grime, that wind that has shaped the topography of San Francisco with all the hills and the cragginess of the beaches, there's something that infuses the people, where we have this creativity to deal with stuff in a way that is unique to this place. And that is what gave birth to Urban Alchemy. That is the innovation that we are going to export throughout this country, that we have already began exporting throughout this country. Los Angeles, our Circle program, response connected to the 911 systems. This program has also been replicated in San Francisco through the HEART program. We are also going to be launching it in Austin and Portland. What we are demonstrating is this is not a fluke. There is something special happening here. My dad used to always say to me, and I'm so grateful to him for instilling this in my mind and my soul. Lena, don't tell me what you don't want, tell me what you do want. If we want something different, we need to start focusing on the things that are working and to start naming what it is that we want. To our practitioners, this data is proof that what you are doing is working. I know it's hurtful when people say stuff like all you're doing is just standing around. We're spending too much money on this from day to day. You know that you're out here making a difference. You are watching these miracles unfold. You are connecting with people, and I know you know because you feel the love from the people. If you weren't doing that work, they wouldn't allow you to be here. But the fact that you are embraced and you are loved, you know the difference that you're making. But now we got the data, and it's from Stanford University. You are those heroes. And I see you, I thank you. And next, I want to introduce our illustrious mayor, Mayor London Breed, who allowed us to be, who allowed us to thrive, and who allowed this miracle to grow in San Francisco.
All right, thank you, Dr. Miller, and welcome to the TLs, everybody. Let me just say, as someone who was born and raised in this city, as someone who grew up in San Francisco, not too far from the Tenderloin, we always knew that this neighborhood had challenges. But I will tell you that it is an amazing community filled with people, filled with families, filled with immigrants, filled with people from all parts of San Francisco, from Lakeview to the Bayview to Fillmore. All kinds of people from all walks of life live and grow and thrive in the Tenderloin. But we also know there are real challenges here as well. And we also know that police alone can't just be the solution. And part of what I appreciate so much about today is many of us, like Dr. Miller and I, and folks who work with Urban Alchemy, they understand anecdotally what is going on in the Tenderloin and how much of an impact that the people who work for Urban Alchemy, who are out there putting their lives on the line when others won't even walk through the Tenderloin, they understand the significance of the impact, because every single day, can you imagine confronting someone with a knife, or someone who's about to overdose, or someone who just is running in and out of the streets and they're trying to save lives? And this is happening regularly, on a regular basis, with the people of Urban Alchemy every single day. And here we have, instead of folks criticizing Urban Alchemy, instead of people saying it's too much money and they ain't doing nothing and just mad and being political about it, Stanford came, Dr. Stewart and the folks at Stanford came to Dr. Miller and said, we want to help because we see and we notice the difference. And we want to work with you. We don't want to be on the outside analyzing you and telling what you're doing or what you're not doing. We want to work as a partner with you to really analyze the data and really understand what is happening. And on the places, as Dr. Miller has said, on the areas where Urban Alchemy is located, there has been a 52% reduction in crime in the Tenderloin in those particular areas. How significant is that? It's significant. Would have died from drug overdoses. The people who would have been in other situations are no longer in those situations because of Urban Alchemy and Urban Alchemy alone. That is significant in and of itself. And that is why we are here today, because this is an important institution filled with people who care about community, filled with people who may have had their own challenges with the criminal justice system or with addiction or with other issues that they see people on the streets are facing. So the empathy comes from a place of experience and understanding and a desire to see something better for those who are struggling. That's what Urban Alchemy represents for the Tenderloin community. That is the work that they do that oftentimes goes unnoticed and thankless from leaders of this city, but not from this one. So today, as you hear the data and get a better understanding of what Urban Alchemy is about and what they do, it's not about just the data. It's about the people. It's about the relationships. It's about that person that says, just because that individual like Louis is talking to them for Urban Alchemy, they're agreeing to treatment and they're clean and sober for a year. It's about that person that didn't die on the streets of San Francisco from a drug overdose. We talk about how amazing and how beautiful this city is. And this is a beautiful city. This is an incredible city filled with opportunity. I understand and I am the beneficiary of that opportunity. But too often, people who suffer in this community are not. And the fact is, without Urban Alchemy, it would be far worse. And I feel that things are getting better, it's feeling brighter. No, we are not where we want to be, but we are definitely in a better place than what we used to be. In fact, in the Tenderloin, we've seen an overall 11% drop in crime. And again, that is attributed to the relationship that exists based on the work of our police department, our ambassadors, and especially Urban Alchemy. So thank you all for being here today to report on this data, but more importantly, let's report on the facts. Let's report on the various situations and incidents that occur where no one even talks about it. No one even sees it. Those are the stories of lives saved and changed that need to be told more. And that's why we're here today, to talk about the data, but to tell those stories and to make sure people understand that we are going to continue to do all the work necessary, all the investments necessary to continue to support Urban Alchemy, to continue to invest in the Tenderloin community, to make sure that every person who lives and works here is safe. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Thank you so much, Mayor Bree. The relationship to academia can never be understated. Its importance. They shape our young, brilliant minds. They give us benchmarks to hold us accountable. And today, they provide the data that makes the things that we see on the streets and in our communities real through data. And so I don't want to take up a lot of time. I want to invite Ms. Dr. Stewart from Stanford University to come and share the data that we've all gathered together to hear. And so if you all would welcome Dr. Stewart to talk about the impact report that's come from their study. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Forrest Stewart. I'm a professor of sociology at Stanford. I'm the director of the Stanford Ethnography Lab. I'm joined by a core member of our research team, Kylan Moore, a PhD candidate at Stanford, who's been really spearheading a lot of the analysis and the statistics that I want to share with you all today. So for about the last decade or so, I've specialized in research across the country. So in cities like Los Angeles, and Chicago, and Seattle, focusing on how cities can respond to issues like urban disorder, violence, homelessness. And for the last year, I've been kind of training my focus on the Tenderloin and mid-market with a terrific research team, Kylan Moore, and then Patrick Janilis, who's a professor at the Northwestern Medical School. So we've just finished, as you've heard so far today, we've just finished this study where we evaluate whether or not the Urban Alchemy Street Practitioner Program has indeed reduced crime here in San Francisco. And I just want to point out kind of some of the origins of this story, some of the origins of this study. So a lot of these kinds of evaluations are typically commissioned by cities. They're often commissioned, contracted out by organizations. We've done ours differently. So we've done ours independently, funded and run entirely through Stanford University. And in fact, I think it's worth noting, the study actually came about as kind of a coincidence. I had been walking actually down Hyde in the summer of 2021 as part of a different research project elsewhere in the city, and I had some time to kill. And I hit the corner of Eddy and Hyde, and I noticed these two very different scenes on both sides of the street. So on the northern side, unfortunately, there was an active drug market. There were people selling wares on the sidewalk. The sidewalk was so full that I had to walk into the street. And then when I hit the corner of Eddy, I looked across the street, and it was peaceful, and there was no crime. And the big difference was, besides those conditions, there were these people wearing these green vests with this Urban Alchemy logo on it. And I started to talk to residents and business owners over the next few weeks, and they said that Urban Alchemy, these folks who were standing out there, were making them feel safer, and they were convinced that Urban Alchemy was reducing crime. But it's one thing to feel safer, it's another thing to actually be safer. This is kind of my job to kind of parse out the difference between the two. So we put this question to the test. Here's what we did. We grabbed all the crime statistics that are publicly available from the San Francisco Police Department, and we analyzed them. And the design that we did, I'm not going to get too technical, but it's called a quasi-experimental design. And it's pretty standard in policy analysis if you want to evaluate whether or not a policy has actually had effect. And it's borrowed from essentially like experimental drug trials. And what you do is we grabbed every intersection, 40 of them, where Urban Alchemy is stationed, and we treat that as our experimental group. And then we match each one of those intersections with an intersection where there is no Urban Alchemy practitioner. And we make sure those two intersections are matched as well as we can. So we have an experimental group where Urban Alchemy is, and a control group where there is no Urban Alchemy. And then we start the clock. And we look to see how the Urban Alchemy intersections, the experimental intersections, differ from those control intersections. And we watched them over preceding 12 months, and we found that in the Urban Alchemy intersections, total crime went down 52%. So just to put some raw numbers on this, there were about 320 crimes per week in those 40 intersections. This falls to about 150 crimes per week once Urban Alchemy comes onto the scene. We found an even larger drop in drug crimes, which actually fell 80% in the Urban Alchemy intersections. And whenever you see these kinds of big results, you want to double check to make sure something else isn't pushing these reductions. There's all kinds of lingering other things that could actually be responsible. What's neat about a quasi-experimental design is that it's what's called a causal design. So we can say that Urban Alchemy caused these changes, but we have to also include some other potential theories and explanations as to why crime dropped. So the first one we tested that we included in our model was COVID. COVID caused a drop in crime all over the place. So was the reduction that we were seeing attributed to Urban Alchemy, or was it attributed to COVID? According to our analysis, this is not a drop attributed to COVID. There's also another question. Was Urban Alchemy merely displacing the crime going on in those 40 intersections to nearby intersections? We include this in our model, and we determined that 52% reduction is not attributed to displacement into other intersections. So this is pretty confidently, we can say, a reduction caused by Urban Alchemy. So moving forward, some of the things we've been doing over the last year and a half, members of our research team have actually been shadowing, including myself, have been shadowing Urban Alchemy practitioners, sometimes up to 10 hours a day, watching what they do, trying to figure out what is the kind of secret sauce, what is the mechanism that's responsible for reducing these crimes. Things like building trust, things like creating social debt, things like providing resources. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be integrating into our analysis, as our next step is to write up these findings and to begin submitting this for scientific peer review. So those will be done in the next couple weeks. And I just want to conclude kind of describing the study by just sharing our gratitude and our thanks to the team at Urban Alchemy. Subjecting yourself to these kinds of rigorous evaluations can put you in some hot water if the results don't necessarily turn up, but Urban Alchemy approached this with a kind of confidence and transparency that allowed us to come in out of the blue independently and hold them accountable. And I think that it's a real model for how we can do academic and organizational kind of collaborations and accountability in the future. So thank you all for being such an outstanding partner for us.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Thank you, your team. Thank you to Stanford University. Next up, we have Mr. Steve Gibson from the Mid-Market Foundation. This type of work nationwide is not possible in a vacuum. It means that we have to be partners with our academic partners, with our civic partners, and also with our business improvement partners. And so we want to invite Mr. Steve Gibson up to talk a bit about their role in our partnership and how it's contributed to our success. Thank you.
Steve Gibson, Executive Director of the Mid-Market Foundation, Mid-Market Business Association. I just want to say a couple of things. One, we recognized Urban Alchemy and their talents quite a ways back. In 2019, we teamed with Urban Alchemy on a pilot project on the corner of 6th and Market. And that's where the whole idea of this community-based safety program began. We were asked by businesses on that intersection to make change because it was kind of chaotic at the time. And so we teamed with Urban Alchemy. We did this small pilot project, and that really proved that the Urban Alchemy approach could make a difference. From this pilot project, with the blessing and the financial support of the mayor and her Office of Economic Workforce Development, we were able to grow this program. We are now entering our 4th year of the community-based safety program, working with Urban Alchemy. And you've heard about the change, the data behind it, the statistics. It's all true. We can give you stories about businesses that were saved, about certainly they've saved hundreds of lives on the street, and they've made an incredible difference. I mean, the biggest thing that we have is that where they are not, people begging us to extend the program, and now it is throughout all of Mid-Market, most of the Tenderloin, and has grown from this one intersection to all of that area. It has been very successful and continues to be successful. And before I leave, I want to bring one thing that has not been mentioned here, but is incredibly important to this whole program, is the fact, it chokes me up a little bit, but the lives of the practitioners and how their lives have changed by doing this work. The people on the street, as we call them, the guests on the street, their lives have been saved and changed, but so have the practitioners. They have gone on to other jobs, to get college degrees, a number of things. But 200 or 300 practitioners have passed through this program and have really changed their lives. And that's, Urban-Alchemy does not get enough credit for that part of this. So I want to thank Stanford for recognizing this, for validating what we knew, what we've seen on the street, the positive changes. I thank the mayor again for supporting us and for continuing to support us in this program. And thank all of you for caring enough to be here to record this event and to spread the good, positive news about the Tenderloin, the Mid-Market, and about Urban-Alchemy program. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Stephen. A perfect segue to our final speaker for this morning, to represent the men and women who spend countless hours in the Tenderloin and Mid-Market communities who do this work every day in support of our most vulnerable neighbors and all those who pass through these streets. I want to introduce our Director of Operations for San Francisco, Mr. Artie Gilbert, who will come and talk to us on behalf of the practitioners that you see around here.
Thank you, KP. I want to share 2 stories. The first story that I want to share is about when we received our first office on 72 Street. And when we received our office over there, one day I was walking down Stevenson Avenue. And when I was walking down Stevenson Avenue, a guy approached me. And when the guy approached me about how he had got off drugs and he stopped drinking. And he asked me, would it be possible for him to become an employee for Urban-Alchemy? I said, of course. I said, you have to come down to the office and apply. 2 days after that, he came and applied, and he became an employee. 3-4 days after that. A week after that, 2 years after that, he became a supervisor for Urban-Alchemy. Two years after that, he became a director for Urban-Alchemy. He's currently a director for one of our biggest programs, which is the Born SF MTA program. The second story I have to share is about 54th McAllister Street. If anyone know about 54th McAllister Street, it was a lot of negative behavior that was going on over there. You had a lot of people selling drugs, using drugs, sleeping in tents, blocking the doorway where the senior citizens couldn't go to and fro inside their establishment or their homes. And also when they had a truck that came by or come and dropped them off in the wheelchair to be able to get into the senior citizen home. When we was called upon to go over there and see could we address the issue, one thing about Urban-Alchemy, we're kind. So when we say that we're kind and we have empathy and compassion, that includes everyone. We don't discriminate. We don't discriminate what you're doing. That's your choice. However, we went over there, by that being said, we went over there a week in advance, and we went over there in a week in advance to share with them is that we will be here in a week. And in the week that when we arrive, the next week that we arrive, this kind of behavior, this kind of negative selling drugs and sleeping in front of this establishment cannot go on any longer. The week after that, we arrived, and now the place in front of 54 McAllister is now clean and able to walk through. The senior citizens can come in and out of the establishment in their wheelchairs. Thank you for your undivided attention, Dr. KP.
So we've heard from the folks doing the work. We've heard from our stakeholder partners. We've heard from our amazing mayor. We've heard from the leadership of the organization. We've heard the data. Now we have a question to answer. When we walk out of here, do we go back and continue in the chorus of despair, saying there's no hope, nothing's changing? Or do we take the data that we hold so valuable? Do we take the narratives that we heard? Do we do what our mayor said and recognize that while we're not where we want to be, that we're not where we were, and take that to encourage us to move forward, to double down on interventions that have now been proven by data to work, to continue to support and speak up for the men and women that do this work? Or do we just go back to business as usual? Do we decide that we actually want to continue pushing a message that says that nothing's getting better? I think we all know the answer to that. I think we all know our intellectual responsibility, our responsibility to the city, and our responsibility to the people that we all have been tasked to serve in one way or another. And we have the responsibility to go and push a message that says there are options, there is opportunity, there is hope. And when we all pull together, when we all are willing to be honest with one another, that we can make changes throughout the communities that we hold so dear. And so thank you all for being here today. Thank you for taking this time. Thank you for spreading the message and sharing the news. While we won't do question and answers, all of our speakers today are willing to be available for step-asides at the conclusion of the program. And so without further ado, thank you all and have a fantastic day.